Okay, so in this video we're checking out the AXISFLYING KOLAS7. I wanted to do a little bit sort of a pre-flight look over on this. Is a kind of a unique drone, folding 7-inch, and I don't think there's anything else out there like this currently. I do still have the KOLAS6. Guys, remember this is from a while back. I actually made some modifications to this already that I didn't really make a video on, but I've been flying around with I took the GPS off the back here and put it on the battery strap just to get better signal. But yeah, I've been, this is one of I actually fly quite a bit here and there. This just sits in my car, and then I just carry some batteries and fly it around wherever. And this is much lighter than the KOLAS7. So quite a different application of this one. Obviously the camera's more centered versus in the front. This is good. This is going to be more like a traditional 7-inch with the arms unfolded. So it's pretty hefty. It's going to be able to carry a lot of weight, whereas this 6-inch size with the smaller motors can't really carry that much battery in terms of getting more flight time. But totally different concept here. But they have gone with a little bit different mechanism here. Obviously with the folding arms, instead of the arms folding up, they slide out sideways. And I guess since that's the main feature of this, we'll take a look at that first. So you can see here that the arms are not the same on each side. There's this little notch here, and then there's obviously an appropriate notch on the other side here, so they lock into each other. And then there's a piece of metal here, and it looks like it's on both sides. Yeah, obviously that's to prevent the carbon from wearing down, and it's not on this piece of the arm here. So yeah, since this is the notch and this is the smaller part, this is more likely to wear down. And they've done the same thing on the other arms as well. So you got that notch here that goes into here. So they reinforce that so you don't have that carbon piece, that little locking mechanism wear out over time. It's a 6mm arm here on the 7-inch, pretty typical for a 7-inch, 2.5mm top and bottom plates. And this one here obviously has the Vista. It can have an air unit. There's a 03 version, analog version, etc. This one here has the RunCam Wasp digital camera. And then you can see here that stack is the AXISFLYING iStack. It's the same one that I showed you in the Manta 5 video. So it's basically an all-in-one enclosed stack. So it's got the 4-in-1 AC and the flight controller, 2 different boards, but it's all encased in that metal box that kind of holds everything together. And then there's all these little plugs, and that plug right there that's empty is actually for this receiver plug that they included. This one did not include a receiver. I'm going to probably use an Express LRS receiver. Plugs into there, and then it looks like the receiver will go into that little TPU part right there, and then obviously the antenna will go in the front over here, in the front where it should be. Got your GoPro mount over here. The way the arms lock is through is like this little lever mechanism here, and then there's some springs. So you can see as you push this down, that spring will hold that lever in place, and you can see that is right there. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but that is what is actually holding the arms together. Yeah, so there's like a little notch right there that's going to hold the arms into place, and then to release the arms, to allow them to unlock, you just hold this down and then slide the arms out. So it looks like all of the wires and everything are nice and well organized, and there's a little bit of slack there to account for the folding mechanism. But let's see, so we can probably, these are the back arms here. Can pop these out like so, and then they kind of reach this point here where they don't want to go anymore, and that's because you need to press down on this lever a little bit, and so slide this in here, and then it should go. Yeah, and then you should hear it lock. Okay, so it would be best to, this is a little hard to show, but the arm that has the notch here, not without the metal pieces, you want to move that into place first. So basically kind of move that in place like that, where it's lined up with the frame. And then this second arm should now go in. There you go. And then you hear a little click. That means that this is locked into place. And then you should see these little springs pop up. So that's the lever. This lever shouldn't be loose. If it's a little bit loose, that means it's not actually locked. So now this is actually locked into place. And the arms are actually quite, they don't move at all. I can't get them to move also. They must have done a pretty good job in terms of measuring the tolerances to get it so that there's no play in the arm, which is important. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of vibrations when you fly. Because these are some pretty big motors. These are these 287 motors are at 1350 kV. These are 2807 size. So, yeah, typical 7-inch motor for 7-inch long-range quad. So we'll do the same thing here in the front. I think pull this lever down. I'm going to move this arm into place first. This is the one without the little metal bracing. And move that in first, and then we'll move this second one in. And then each time you have to hold this little lever down just to allow it to go into place. And we should hear a click. And this lever should come up. And now you know that it's locked, and you can obviously check, make sure there's no play in the arm. And there we go. We have the 7-inch KOLAS7 fully, I guess, unfolded here. And you can see here the motors in the front are higher because the front arms are attached to the top plate, whereas the rear arms are attached to the bottom plate here. And you got these little landing feet here. Obviously, you have this TPU part over here in the back. And then you have these landing feet here on the back arms. So when you actually put it on the ground, this part here is actually not touching the ground. It's just these little legs in the back. And then you have the two things in the front. Now, personally, I would have rather seen the front arms on the bottom plate here and the rear arms on the top plate, just to have the rear motors higher than the front motors, because I think that's better for less prop wash, especially if you're going faster. Now, it's possible or probable that putting these front arms here on the bottom plate probably presented an issue with the camera or something like that. Not 100% sure why they chose this design, but if it were me, if I was designing this, I would have put the front arms on the bottom plate so the front motors were lower, and then you put the rear arms on the top plate in the back, and then maybe even have the motors inverted or something like that. I don't know. I would have done it a little bit differently, but obviously the point of this is to basically collapse it down to a smaller size so you can put it into like a backpack or something. So this is going to be for those of you guys that are maybe don't want to put the quad on your backpack on the outside, but maybe on the inside instead. And obviously a 7-inch quad on with the arms not folded is going to be pretty large, so you're going to need a huge backpack. So this actually brings it down to a much smaller size, and they actually give you a little bag here. It's not that small, but you can put this bag in, put the quad, fold it up, put it in the bag, and then stick it into your backpack, and it actually takes up, as you saw when it was folded, not a lot of space, which is pretty impressive. So they included these HQ props. So these are the 7 by 3.5 by 3s, and I'm not going to use these because why have a folding quad where you have to take the props off every time you want to fold it up? That's I don't know, it seems kind of like a hassle. So instead I'm going to try these new Foxeer dowel props. These are the new 7-inch fold 2s, and these have the new metal hubs. So for those of you that had the 7-inch props that were exploding before, this apparently solves the problem. I'm going to give it a try on this one. The pitch is similar. It's not exactly the same, but the whole point is I want to have a folding prop on a folding drone, because then I'll take the props off every time. So but the thing is though, I still have to take the antenna off, while the GPS here is able to rotate and you can kind of push it out of the way. Would have been nice to do the same thing for the antenna, where it could have, be on a rotating mechanism and you can fold it down. So another little thing that I would have changed in the design, if it were me, maybe I'll pass along these suggestions for the next version. The Kola7 V2 might have some of those. Anyway, let's go and see how this flies. I'll show you some pictures here of what it looks like with the folding props on it. Alright, so before I talk about the flying characteristics of this, which are interesting because of the nature of the geometry of the arms and the folded nature of this frame, different than expected, but we'll talk about that here in a second. I do want to show you how much this stuff weighs. I did fly it with the Hero 11 Mini. I did not use the included battery straps. They were a little bit too short. I did use a bigger battery than they recommended, which I think might affect the way it flies, because the pid tune's probably for the recommended size. I think they were saying like 2,000 to 3,000 milliamp hours. It's a pretty wide range. 6S. This is a 3,300 milliamp hour 6S, and it fits on here no problem. The way I have it on here, this is an Owline. I reviewed this battery a long time ago. It's pretty old. It's got at least 200 flights on it. So flight time on this is, if you're on a new battery, is going to be more than what I got. So obviously, again, it's going to also depend on how you fly it as well, and the wind conditions are very important in this case, especially for something like this. But let's go ahead and take the battery off. And just note that I did use a thinner battery strap to get it in between the, I guess it's the run cam link air unit back there and that standoff. The wider ones don't fit in that little space there, and I wanted to obviously get two straps on here for this pretty long battery. Alright, getting all this on here is kind of tricky, so it's about around 647-48 grams, no battery. And the battery I used for 3,300 milliamp hour 6S is 433 grams. And the Mini 11 is 131 grams, so I'll put up the total weight here, all up flying weight. Now in terms of the way it flew on the folding prop versus the prop that it was sent with, about the same. Obviously the big difference here is that with the folding prop I can still fold up the arms and kind of reduce that size. And as you can see here, very compact compared to the full, the arms being folded out. It uses a lot more space. So if you want to stick this into a bag or something, if you're backpacking, hiking, that kind of thing, you don't want something really huge to pack and carry a huge bag, it will fold up to a much smaller size. And if you do still want to use the three-bladed props that this came with, of course you can. You have to unfold the arms on the drone and then obviously install the props, which will take more time. That's why I think that these folding props are going to be good enough, because they pretty much flew about the same. So I think that the pid tune that this came with is probably for a slightly smaller battery than the ones I flew with. This one here is a little bit heavier maybe possibly than the ones that they use, and I don't have access to a lot of 6S larger batteries for these 7-inch drones. I did try like a single 6S lithium ion pack with the one from iFlight, the one with the 21700 cells. I was not able to get two on here because it's not long enough for two, so I did one, but that seemed like it was a little bit too little weight, and also had a lot of bobbles. Has a lot of, not as many bobbles on the heavier setup here, and it seems to bobble more in windy conditions versus non-windy conditions. I think the wind just kind of pushes it around more. And I think the arm geometry of this setup here with the arms, the front motors being higher than the rear motors, contributes to the bobbles, and also its predisposition to getting pushed around by the wind. I would have liked to have seen this design with the arms reversed, where the front motor was on the bottom plate and the arm was on the bottom plate, so the front motor is lower and the rear arm is on the top plate and higher, and that rear motor would be higher. I think this setup here needs to be reversed to get to get a lot of the sort of tuning problems out of there. It might be able to be improved with a different pitch tune. I think most of the bobbling is on the roll axis, so it's possible that a little bit of extra P gain on the roll axis might tune that out, but I didn't mess around with the PID tune at all. I just flew it the way it was sent. So it's something that you might want to, if you do happen to get this in, you want to get a better tune, you should probably contact AXISFLYING and see if they can help you out there, because I don't plan on doing any more tuning or anything like that on this particular model. Don't have the time for that. But yeah, personally, for most drones, the motor on the front being lower than the motor on the back is going to actually give you better prop wash performance, because the thrust is coming off of the front motors, especially if you're tilted over a lot, isn't going to interfere with the rear motor. Whereas with the motor being higher than the rear motor in this case, that sort of dirty air is coming backwards here into this lower motor here when you're flying. And I think that is the source of a lot of the bobbling. But again, it could also be due to the size of the battery I'm using, because these 7 inches are pretty sensitive to the weight that's on here, especially the battery size. So something to keep in mind, like a slightly smaller, I'm thinking like 3,000 milliamp hour, maybe slightly less weight, is probably going to produce less of a bobble than this one, just because of the extra weight. But this is my speculation, because I don't have that battery and I didn't test that, so I can only give you a guess there in that case. So ultimately, the question is, should you get this one or a regular 7-inch drone? And my answer to that is it kind of depends on what you want to use it for. I think that if you do need something that's going to fold up to a smaller space, and it's a specific kind of use case, right, where you really need something that's going to fold up, but you don't mind necessarily the PID tuning issues, which aren't a big deal for the final output of the video that comes out of the camera. So if you're using something like a Real Steady Go with the GoPro, those bobbles aren't seen in the final footage. So I'll link that final footage in the video description. You can watch the whole flight if you want and compare it to the DVR goggle footage, where you can kind of see the little bobbles as you're flying around, but you don't see that in the Real Steady Go footage at the end, because that's all stabilized out. Also, if you're worried about props in view, yes, you do see props in view in the camera on the goggle footage, but it does not show up in the final footage from the GoPro after you've stabilized it in Real Steady Go. It's basically cropped in to that point where it isn't seen, and I use the same angle here as the this cage here. So I put the camera about this here. If you're a little bit lower on the camera angle, you might see props in view. But I just basically use the same camera angle as the FPV camera for the GoPro, and that did not show any props in view. I think lastly, the only thing that I would recommend is maybe having some sort of a folding mechanism for this antenna, instead of having to remove it, because you can fold down this GPS unit here. Would have been nice to have this antenna be able to fold in as well and put it under the battery strap. That way it's completely compact. Obviously, otherwise you have to unscrew this every time to put it into a bag, in a smaller bag, smart case, and that kind of I don't know, it defeats the purpose of having this setup. But ultimately, I would rather see a redesign here, swap the arms so that the front arm is on the lower plate and the rear arm is on the upper plate. And I think that would actually give better flight performance overall. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I know I'm kind of late on this one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Talk to you guys in the next one.